Welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at just Saturday's five-gamer. It's a really heavy early slate, but we're focusing on the late-night action. And it's not a really appealing slate, but we got to do our jobs.
A little late-night smooth jazz action.
Brought to you by Jose Fernandez.
Brought to you by Jose Fernandez and Matt Wieters. All right. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a five-gamer, so ownership percentages are going to be high. It's going to be tough to differentiate yourself, but sometimes, and I think I'm a little different than most people. Sometimes I like these. It's kind of like not that much work. I mean, okay, compared to a 15-game slate, it's a lot less research, correct?
Yeah, this is a slacker slate like you.
Yeah, exactly. So you research those 5 games. It's pretty straightforward, and then you fly them out there in tournaments. No, I probably not cash tomorrow, correct? Or tonight?
I'm probably tossing in a few GPP lineups at best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the slate. I think cash game early on is probably the way to go.
Definitely.
So, but looking right into catcher, I mean, this kind of sums up this position. Your two top options are Bobby Wilson and Brett Nicholas, and both on Texas. So it kind of just depends on what they work with. But Matt Wieters 3,200 against Schumacher there. I think Schumacher's going to be a guy I target a lot against. I mean, just because he's been dreadful against really both sides of the plate.
Yeah, and I think Baltimore facilitates that process by sort of having some decent stacking options. So yeah, that's definitely one way to go for tournaments tomorrow.
And the one thing is, I mean, see if he's in the lineup at first, because I mean, we know Wieters has his days off, but
yeah,
I just think, one, you're paying down, you're taking very little risk at these prices, and you feel pretty good about Wieters hitting 6th in that lineup.
Right. I think then we're really looking at the strongest there with Grandal, Realmuto, sort of in that 3,100 range.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of sums it up. I mean, Grandal at 3,200's all right there. JT Realmuto, not the most ideal, but he is a guy who's been fairly consistent with getting on base.
Right. The normal cast of characters here, Posey going against Lester, and who's our other pal there? Ramos going against Fernandez, so that's kind of a bummer right off the bat here, but it does get better.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you wanted to be different, Posey against Lester at 3K. I mean, with Posey's track record against lefties, if you wanted to be different, I have no problem with that, just because that price tag's so low.
Right.
So, but yeah, overall, I think Realmuto, Grandal, Castro is kind of where it's at, and then Wieters. Just depending on who's in the lineup. First base, I mean, it's very similar, except the prices are up higher. You see Anthony Rizzo, 5,100 against Matt Cain. Matt Cain, 371, well allowed to lefties, 1.42 home runs per 9 since 2014. Rizzo, great tracker, high price, but overall, I mean, he is your top option.
Yeah, he's the pretty clear top option. And I mean, Chris Davis, if you're stacking Baltimore, or even as sort of a standalone guy, I'm okay with that. But Rizzo definitely over him in that top tier.
Yeah, definitely. And if Tyler White's in the lineup, I think he's an interesting GPP play, just because it's Houston-Texas game. There's not really blatant splits between either of these pitchers, but I just think Vegas has this one pretty high scoring. That ballpark kind of, inflates runs and home runs at times, so you kind of like that.
Yeah. Okay. And since this is a five gamer, I think this is where you can get a little weird with your tournament lineups. Now, I'm not going to ask anyone to go on the Prince Fielder run with me in this 5-game slate, but I think I might make a lineup with him. I know he's batting under 200 on the season, but this is the type of slate where if he gets a homer, that's pretty big in tournaments. And the same with Pujols. Obviously, you're not happy with what he's done so far. But I think as they're basically punt plays on a 5-gamer,
Yeah. And I mean, Pujols, reasonable matchup. I mean, Gossman, 1.42 home runs per 9 to right-handers, 3.35 WOBA since 2014. So I think Pujols, at that price tag is probably the way I would lean. You're going to run that solo with Prince Fielder. You're
Yeah,
on your
no,
own.
I know. Yeah. And he's going to go for 5 with 3 strikeouts. That's fine.
But yeah, I mean, 5-game slate, you're kind of limited. I think Rizzo just kind of stands alone as
Mhm.
your top option to get in there.
Right. And then you mentioned Justin Bour as a pretty decent play at 3,200. That's pretty solid if you're looking lower.
Yeah, Marlins lefties, I mean, kind of intriguing just because Joe Ross has shown some inconsistency with left-handers. I mean, his career 3.36 to lefties, hard ball rate at 37%, so they're seeing it pretty well.
Yeah, and so you mentioned Posey. Does Brandon Belt sort of fall into that same type of punt play, or is he someone you're not really looking at because it's Lester?
Yeah, I'm not really looking at that one there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Posey's the only one I would take a shot on just against
Right.
Lester.
Mm-hmm.
Second base here. I mean, Jose Altuve comes in as the top option, but that price tag's pretty steep. One guy we were talking about before shows Daniel Murphy 3,700. They're just like, why did they do this to you? Because even though it's Fernandez, it makes you think a little bit.
These last 3 slates, it's been like, all right, terrible matchup, but they bumped his price down. Terrible matchup. Oh, they bumped it down again. And now today, again, it's like, keep it at 4,500 so I don't have to think about it today. I'm probably not going to go with it, but I mean, that is super intriguing, and I wouldn't knock anyone for trying to go contrarian with that at 3,700.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Fernandez has been obviously come off back-to-back very solid starts, but he was fairly hittable at the beginning of the season. I mean, it surely looks like he's figured it out, and I'm not encouraging anyone to go really full on attack him. But 5-game slate, I mean, these guys who are in bad spots,
Right,
are at a price tag where you can take a shot in the GPP and get some low ownership.
exactly. And in the same range, Odor. I mean, when he's not throwing punches and getting suspended, this Rangers team is actually pretty intriguing on this slate as sort of a contrarian. I don't think they're going to be very high owned, so I think that might be an interesting way to get a little lower ownership, and I think they have some upside.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, obviously double check Odor because of his suspension looming, but he's appealing, so you don't know when that's exactly going to set in. Derek Dietrich, 3,300 is a guy who I'm intrigued with just because we mentioned the raw struggles. And Dietrich hitting leadoff at that price is a nice value.
Yep.
Third base here, and I love Manny Machado today. 5K. Once again, it's priced up pretty high, but we're looking at Schumacher. I mean, 323 WOBA to right-hander since 2014. A big 1.41 home runs per 9. He kind of stands out as kind of one of the top hitters from this slate, and I think there's a couple really in that game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Obviously Chris Bryant's sitting right there, tier down, 4,400. So I think you can kind of play with how your roster construction goes and then sort of build off third. Because I think if you can, you probably want to pay up here, kind of like at first with Rizzo. That's how I'm looking at building lineups. And again, Beltre's sitting there 3,500. Those are the high price guys I'm kind of looking at there.
Yeah, I mean, Beltre is a nice spin down at 3,500. I definitely don't mind coming down just because, I mean, outside of Dietrich at third base, depending on your roster construction, there's not a lot going on down there.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, those are Bryant, Machado, and Beltre, kind of the easier names to plug in. And Beltre's price, it just makes it a lot easier to not go any lower.
And I mean, Justin Turner always chilling there around the 3K range.
There's a reason.
Just chilling there. He deserves to be there for sure.
Shortstop here, and I think one of the things that kind of is cool is Machado. I mean, 5K, you can put him at shortstop and put Beltre at third base. You can kind of get some exposure both ways there. I'm having a problem paying price tag wise in cash games as far as Seager and Correa go.
Yeah.
But I do like them as far as on the slate there, especially, in GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to play Correa, the price doesn't really matter. Even if it was like 500 more, it's still 5-game slate, so you're paying for him either way. If you like the value, and if you're doing a Houston stack, obviously he's going in there. But in terms of the value itself, Seager, I don't necessarily like that either. But the problem is, once you go down beyond those three, the next one, Addison Russell, and then just nothing else. So
yeah, no, Russell's the guy I'm looking at if I'm kind of paying down.
Yeah,
range, and he just kind of fits right in. He's been hitting the ball well, hitting 300 over the last 10 games there, hitting for some
Mhm.
power and driving in runs. So, I mean, he's in a good spot to do some damage in one of the better offenses. And you look at Kane, yes, he's pitched well of late, but still overall, 3.32 WOBA to right-handers since 2014.
And then 2600, my boy Adeni Hekavariaria, Asian Encarnacion, 2600. I think he could get 5 to 7 points.
Which is about what you need at 2,600. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean 26. He's been hitting the ball well of late, so you like that there. Looking at outfield, and yes, I mean obviously the top price guys are out there. I mean Trout's certainly in play against Gossman, big time upside there. He's been playing well, but I think it's one of those times where I'm going to sit down in kind of that mid range there, because I mean there's a lot to like with Yelich and Jones and Trumbo, kind of sitting 41, 4,200.
Right. I mean, obviously those high-end guys could always hit, but I think the middle outfielders, like that middle range is kind of the way you want to go with roster construction and then build with first and third. So I guess what I'm really saying is I really want to do that Cubs stack again. If I can get Rizzo and Bryant in a lineup with some decent pitchers on this slate, if you are playing cash, that'd kind of be what I'm looking at, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at these guys here in that mid range, and as you mentioned, there are lower options here, unlike first and third base, where you feel comfortable with these guys. And I think you kind of sit in that mid tier to low. You could even pop in Joey Ricard if you want for cheap,
Right.
3,100. So, I mean, there's different ways to go, and I think this is going to be one of those slates where maybe you try and find that value play that really opens up your you punt, and I think really behind the dish is going to give you some salary anyway because there's no top options. But you got to try and see when lineups come out that one guy who can kind of free up and give you that next tier.
Right, exactly.
So if you are paying up though for outfielders, I mean, I think Trout's kind of a top option.
Yeah. Springer close. I think that's a close second for Springer, but yeah, you're going with Trout, especially the way he's hitting the ball right now.
Yeah, definitely. So that's going to wrap things up here with the DK Daily Trot. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.